Hello everyone, and welcome to the first running session of my little N-gauge layout. We're going to be doing the Inglenook Shunting Puzzle today, and the aim is to show the video essentially unedited. That means any stalls or difficulties with decoupling are going to be shown in the video, and that's so that it's an honest representation of how the layout runs, rather than doing something very edited and designed to look like real life. As I've said before, the layout isn't finished, but I think it's looking pretty good, and it's certainly in a stage where we can run some trains and have a little bit of fun with it. So with that said, let's get started. So the Jinty's been steamed up, and we're just gonna pull her away from the sidings and approach the wagons. And I'm just gonna start very quickly with an explanation of the Inglenook puzzle in case anyone is unfamiliar with it. Basically, we start with 8 wagons and 1 engine, 5 wagons in the top siding, 3 in the middle siding, and we pick a random order of 5 wagons, and we need to make that 5 wagon train in the top siding. A little extra rule here is that we can only fit 5 wagons in the top siding, 3 in the middle and bottom sidings, and I can only pull 3 wagons out at a time. For this running session, I've purposely picked a difficult train for us to build based upon the positions of the vans as they sit right now. We're going to put the brake van in the furthest right hand position, followed by the green flat wagon, the grain wagon, the red van, and then the grey van. I'm not sure if it's the most efficient way to do things, but personally I like to start by putting the furthest right hand wagon in its correct place and then working back sequentially from there. So in this case that means I'm working to position the brake van first, and then we're going to move on to the green van, and so on and so forth. This means we get the most difficult part out of the way first, and leads to a bit of a sense of progression as we move through the puzzle. So one of the biggest difficulties here is that I've specifically made sure the brake van was in a tough spot, so we have to do a lot of shuffling to be able to get it out and move it into the top siding. I've started by taking 3 wagons out of the top siding so that I'm just left with 2 in that position. And now I'm trying to remove the 2 wagons which are blocking the brake van. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the magnet there. You'll see throughout the puzzle that the magnets certainly aren't perfect. Sometimes the wagons refuse to decouple when I want them to, and sometimes the wagons release when I want them to stay coupled. I believe I've got the magnets in about as good a position as I could get them. It's always going to be a balancing act between things decoupling when you don't want them to, and things staying attached when you're trying to release them. However, for the most part, I can couple and uncouple wagons over the magnet areas without having to use my hands. So with all of that shuffling done, the brake van is now in a position where I can pick it up. However, as you can see, there is a lot of traffic in the way of the top siding, so we're not quite ready to put it in position yet. What I need to do is grab hold of it, which is a little bit tricky. These N-gauge wagons don't weigh a lot, so trying to pick one up on its own can be quite tough. You either have to drive into it super fast, or squish it up against the buffers, which is what I normally do. Here we can see the opposite problem to what we had before, where I am struggling to get the van to come with me over the magnets, so I have to go fast and furious style past them so that I hold on to it. Again, this is more of an issue when you're just picking up a single wagon. When you've got a little train, it's much more reliable. So now I've pulled the brake van up into the top siding, And I'm just trying to grab the two vans here, but I'm having a little bit of trouble because the buffers aren't lining up, so just need to give them a bit of a poke with a pen to get them lined up. That means hopefully now I should be able to get them engaged, which I do. And as I have to follow the rule of only being able to take out 3 trucks at a time, I'm going to disengage the black flat wagon and the open wagon. And I'm going to leave them in that top siding there, and I can deposit my little train of 3 here in the middle siding to be picked up later. And as we move into that siding, we're now approaching the position that I've been aiming for, and that's basically to have the brake van in the first position on either the middle or the bottom siding, because what that means is I can grab the 2 from the top siding, put the brake van on the end of it, and then I will be able to put the brake van in its correct position. It would have been nice to make a big layout with a loop of 00 gauge track to let the Scotsman loose on, but I have to say I'm enjoying running this little N gauge railway, and I'm glad this is the route I took. As we all know, size isn't everything, it's what you do with it that counts, and with this layout there's a lot to do. Spending 20 minutes or so going through the puzzle is a relaxing way to spend a bit of time and lets me enjoy the fruits of my labour. Whilst I can't sit back and watch the trains go round, thanks to the point motors and magnets, I can operate it, for the most part, without having to use my hands, and that's something that always bugged me as a kid. And here we go, so I'm just now manoeuvring the brake van into its desired position for our puzzle, and as I said, it's trying to get the first one in position is by far the hardest. We've had to do an awful lot of moves to get this in the correct position, but now we have wagon number 1 set and ready to go, and as that's the one on the furthest right, we shouldn't have to move that one around again, so we can give ourselves a nice big green tick for that one. And with the brake van in position, our next job is to position the green flat wagon, which is just on this end of 3 in the closest siding that I'm picking up now. And again, there's going to be a lot of shuffling before we can actually get this into the desired position, so first thing to do is to get those 2 wagons out of the way so that they are not blocking it in anymore. And I think for now I'll put them in the top siding for safekeeping. I'm sure the eagle-eyed among you will have noted that I'm using an odd array of wagons from different eras and different areas. For me, I just like to buy stuff that looks cool, or maybe I find a good deal on eBay on something secondhand. So all the stuff I use is purely aesthetic and not meant to represent any kind of real life situation. The same can really be said for the layout as well. It's not based anywhere in particular and just supposed to be kind of generic countryside. And getting back to the action, I'm just dropping off the green flat wagon in the middle of the centre siding. It's a good place for it to be, it means I can come back later and grab it when I'm ready. But first of all, I have to get rid of the wagons blocking the brake van, and I want to grab the first 3 wagons from that line, which means I need to connect the grain van to the black wagon, but they don't want to go. No matter how much I jam my end into the black wagon, it doesn't want to couple, so I'm going to jump in with the pen and give the ends of a bit of a fiddle and hope that they'll couple up. I'm giving it a few more tries, but she doesn't want to budge, so I just resort to ramming it as hard as I can and hoping for the best. That seems to get me where I want to go, and I've got the whole train connected. So again, obeying that rule of 3, I leave the open wagon and the brake van in that top line, and I'm going to deposit the whole train of 3 down in the bottom siding to make as much room as possible for this green flat wagon. Now as I bring that little train of 3 into the bottom siding, you can see a good example of the magnets working well. The train instantly decoupled when I wanted it to, without me having to wiggle it or anything else. There seems to be a pretty high degree of randomness as to whether or not the magnets work well, and it's kind of hard to predict whether or not it's going to work as you expect. I have a feeling if I was to add mass to the wagons and potentially even a little bit of friction to their axles, maybe by a piece of plastic or card acting on the wheels, something like that, I think we may see an improvement in the coupling and uncoupling action. That's something I need to have a bit of an experiment with, and I may even cover it in a later video. Another thing that maybe I should have worked on a bit better was the position of the little flags which show where the magnet areas are. You can just see the one for the closest siding in this image, but the one for the middle and top sidings is actually on the other side of the tracks. That basically means when I'm trying to position the wagons and uncouple them, I can't actually see the flag itself, which kind of defeats its purpose. I may look into adding some kind of conspicuous plant or painting a sleeper a slightly different color so that I can always see the magnet position from this side of the tracks. As you saw there, we had a little stall on the Ginty as well, so I just put that with a cotton bud to get it in position. And with that said, we've now got the green wagon in its correct location. So that's awesome, we've got the first 2 wagons in place. Moving on to number 3 is our grain hopper, and that's going to go in the center position of our train. You'll notice here that things start to get significantly easier. We don't have so many wagons in the way of the train we're trying to create, so there's a lot less shuffling required to get the trucks in the right location. This grain hopper that we're moving around is probably my favorite truck in my collection. It's a Dapple item, and weirdly enough, a lot of Dapple stuff doesn't actually come with NEM sockets that you need to fit their easy shunt couplings. This one I converted using their kit. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to take a knife or a hacksaw to your lovely wagon, particularly considering how expensive they are nowadays. But my advice would be, if you are going to run a setup like this and you want all your wagons to have NEM sockets so that you can use magnetic couplings or something similar, don't let the fact that a wagon doesn't have NEM sockets put you off. I've got a couple of these grain hoppers and I'm really pleased with them. I converted them myself, and once you've done it a couple of times it won't worry you so much, and it opens up a lot more opportunity for different kinds of wagons. Another good example is the open wagon at the front of this train marked SR. I got that cheap secondhand off of eBay and converted it myself for use here. So, as I said, things get a lot more straightforward, and we have now positioned wagon number 3. So with the first 3 done, we are now looking to position wagon number 4, which is the red wooden van. We got a little bit of a stall on the Jinty, so I just gave that a poke to get her going again. I have a feeling that sometimes the motors on the points aren't feeding the frog correctly, because the Jinty does seem to stall on that third set of points quite frequently. And I don't think the stalling is due to dirty track, as I've cleaned mine thoroughly using more alcohol and rubbers than an average Friday night for Charlie Sheen. And as soon as that's said, we have already positioned wagon number 4. Our fifth and final truck is the grey van, which I've just picked up on the end of our little train here. And because most of the wagons we need are already in their correct location, I'm just going to be able to put this straight on the end of our train, and that completes our setup. So now it's just a case of decoupling the open wagon and the brown van from our train, and everything's in the right location. But we're not quite done yet. I like to neaten up all of the wagons that I've used during the puzzle and put 3 in the middle siding and have the bottom siding empty. That's a nice way to leave it, because it means if you want to run the puzzle again, you've already got the wagons in the correct position, so it's just a case of choosing a new order to put your wagons in, or randomly selecting one, however you like to do it. So now, with the wagons neatened up, that means we have completed the Inglenook Shunting Puzzle. So I'm really pleased with how everything works. Normally I can get through a whole running session like that with barely having to touch the train and the track at all. Having an Inglenook setup gives me a reason to interact, get up close to, and just enjoy my layout rather than me having built it and then letting it gather dust. There's still some more things I'd like to do, some details I'd like to add, and in particular building a back scene. I don't think my duvet cover is quite cutting it anymore. So thanks very much for watching, everyone. Next time we'll be doing another build video, so I look forward to seeing you for that one. See ya.